Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. What a day we had yesterday. Content rich. Presentations were innovative and interactive, packed with newsworthy conversations. The social networks were alive with the discussions that were here, and capped off with an unforgettable and lively night owl session, which was off the record, so I can't tell you anything about it here. This morning, we turn to one of the most important stories in the world today. It's been a historic year for Saudi Arabia as we learned of new ambitious projects that lie at the heart of the Kingdom's Vision 2030 transformation program and witnessed Saudi Arabia working to manage a global oil market experiencing some of the most profound changes since the founding of OPEC in the 1970s. We are pleased, and indeed we're honored, to be joined this morning by none other than His Excellency Khalid Al-Falih, Minister of Energy, Industry, and Mineral Resources of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, to receive an update on Vision 2030 and outlook of the oil market. He has a long biography. I'm not going to read it, but if you saw the excitement at the door as he was coming in, I mentioned to somebody backstage, it's as if it was the Mick Jagger of the energy industry. And someone that said, well, or perhaps the Rembrandt of the energy industry. And then someone overheard the conversation and said, no, he's more famous than all that. So it is an honor to have him here. Whenever he helped us launch this Global Energy Forum 2 years ago. We all gain from his wisdom every time he appears here. And Mr. Minister, it's an honor to have you back. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
In the name of Allah, the merciful. Good morning, lovely morning, everyone.
That kind and too generous of an introduction. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum once again, and a very good morning to each and every one of you. I want to thank and congratulate our friends and partners from the United Arab Emirates, especially my very dear and close friend, His Excellency Suhail Al-Mazroui. I want to congratulate them for always putting a good show whenever they host an event. I was here for the ADIPEC conference a few weeks ago, and it was truly world-class by all standards. And I'm sure the Sustainability Week is going to, again, raise the bar, not only for the Emirates, but for all of us in the region. I want to also congratulate the Atlantic Council for keeping their energy forum going. This is the third year in a row. I was here for the inaugural session, and I'm pleased to be back. And it has really become a key event within the Sustainability Week. As Fred mentioned in the introduction, I want to focus in my opening remarks on two themes. One is Vision 2030, and the other, I'm sure, is of interest to many of you, which is what we're doing in the oil markets. So allow me to start with the Vision 2030, and because it is the guiding star for the Kingdom's economic and social transformation and reform programs. And it is of great interest, I know, to the Council and to the broader international community. When it was launched in 2016, I think most analysts at that time agreed that its central aims were both ambitious and bold. They were also, and they remain, breaking old paradigms and offering momentum and energy towards a more prosperous and sustainable future, not only for the Kingdom, but I'm sure its effects will reach wide into the region and beyond. Today, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to say that some of that excitement, some of those deliverables are being seen and felt on the ground. And I will run through a few examples of what we've been doing, not in the planning, but in the implementation of the Vision 2030. To achieve the 96 strategic objectives of the 2030 vision, the agenda has been structured into 13 vision realization programs. And these are massive programs on their own. They comprise a series of initiatives and delivery plans underpinned by a robust governance, planning, and focused execution, as well as a powerful delivery culture. We're already seeing the fruits of this deliberate and interconnected approach as we move from concept to reality in areas such as the Financial Sector Development Program. And I can give you an example within that program. The Saudi stock market Tadawul, within 2 years, has applied and been accepted to join the FTSE Russell, S&P, and MSCI emerging market indexes, which will happen in 2019. That's conservatively projected by these indices to lead to passive and active inflows of $30 to $45 billion into the Saudi capital market within the next 2 years. The Fiscal Balance Program, where we've been able to reduce our budget deficit while increasing non-oil revenue by almost 12%, and the Housing Program, which is worth more than $30 billion, backed by a rapidly expanding mortgage market, which essentially didn't exist, which will grow by an incredible 70% in just the next 2 years. We're also giving a laser-like focus to human capital development. Our Human Capability Development Program, which is headed by no less than His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, was launched recently, focusing on the quality of education, upskilling Saudi youth, and improving their competitive reach in a knowledge-based economy quickly emerging in the kingdom. Meanwhile, the Quality of Life program has already made great strides in areas such as infrastructure, entertainment, and tourism. And though there is more to do, we've made momentous progress in many aspects of female empowerment and female public and economic activity, and particularly employment, which go hand in glove. And for example, there has been a 130% increase, that's more than twofold, in the number of Saudi women in the private sector over the last 4 years, and they now make up 30% of the total Saudi employees of the private sector. Almost in every enterprise today, both government and private, Saudi women are getting opportunities to work. 4 or 5 years ago, that was truly unthinkable. Shifting to my own area of responsibility, encouraging progress is being made. The National Industrial Development and Logistics Program, otherwise known as NIDLIP, which integrates energy, manufacturing, mining, and logistics, is already well underway, but will be officially and publicly launched by His Royal Highness the Crown Prince on the 28th of January, in a couple of weeks. This program, which is really the centerpiece of the vision implementation, is expected to contribute $320 billion to the Saudi GDP by 2030. It is expected to attract $425 billion in new investment, create 11 new industries such as aerospace, automotive, pharma and biomedicine, chemicals and defense, and maximize the return to Saudi Arabia and indeed be the nucleus around which other sectors such as banking, services, and logistics will also grow. We're also embracing new ways of doing business, such as making local content a condition of doing business within the kingdom. To enable that, we're putting new enablers in place. For example, the Saudi Arabian Military Industry Company, or SAMI, was launched with the aim of becoming one of the top 25 global defense companies, directly contributing almost 4 billion to GDP by 2030, creating over 40,000 highly skilled jobs in the defense sector, and playing a key role in increasing the share of non-oil exports to 50%. Likewise, in the energy sector, Saudi Aramco is intending to raise its local content from 30% 4 years ago to 70% by 2021. That's just in 2 years. In fact, they've already gone from 30% to 51%. That's why we're delighted a few weeks ago to inaugurate a key infrastructure piece, which is the King Salman Energy Park, or SPARK, targeting the localization of energy manufacturing and the services supply chain. And before that, a few months earlier, the King Salman International Complex for Maritime Industries and Services, a key project to complement the growth of the Saudi energy industry and contribute to the diversification objectives outlined by the vision. We also recognize the huge potential of SMEs, which is why the vision set an initial target of moving their contribution to GDP from 20%, which is less than half of the industrial average, to 35%, and the General Authority for SMEs is implementing 4 main initiatives to deliver on the promise, including setting up an entrepreneurship and incubation center and a number of venture capital funds. In the area of petrochemicals, we're targeting 3.5% year-on-year growth, supported by more refinery integrated projects within the kingdom, including the well-publicized crude-to-chemical joint venture between Saudi Aramco and SABIC, as well as the recent announcement of Total's refinery in Jubail, Sator, that will be also expanded to include a significant amount of chemicals. In mining and minerals, the kingdom is set to become the second largest phosphate producer globally and a top 10 aluminum producer. Gold production will increase tenfold, and we're developing copper smelting. By 2030, the mineral sector alone is expected to generate 250,000 new jobs, adding 67 billion annually to the GDP. Of course, all of this will be leveraged by our strong energy advantage to attract energy-intensive industries, as well as industries enabled by advanced technologies. At the same time, we will improve energy efficiency and ensure the competitiveness, growth, and profitability of targeted industries and products. And in the related field of sustainability, which is the subject of this week's gathering, we are really seeing incredible progress. I'll be saying more about it this week, but over the coming decade, liquids burning, which has been talked about a lot when addressing the kingdom, liquids burning in utilities will be virtually eliminated. That's about 600,000 barrels per day. As we switch to a more judicious use of our abundant, cleaner, cost-competitive, and sustainable resources in solar, wind, and of course, by doubling our production of natural gas, leading to significant reductions in our greenhouse gas emissions. But we do not intend, of course, to relinquish our preeminence position in energy upstream. In fact, we're reinforcing it with substantial long-term investments, and the kingdom will maintain its policy of sufficient spare capacity to stabilize global oil markets. A few days ago, I was delighted to announce an upward revision of the Kingdom's oil and gas reserves following independent certification by a third-party consultant. It confirms the highest standards of professionalism by Saudi Aramco and governance by the Ministry of Energy and transparency by the Saudi government. And it's why we believe Saudi Aramco is indeed the world's most valuable company and the world's most important. This bodes well for the company's bond plans, which will be launched in a few months, ahead of its acquisition of SABIC shares from the PIF, and of course the IPO in the not-too-distant future. For our part in government, we're doing all we can to make it as attractive, profitable, and easy to do business for those who locate in the kingdom, with a record number of business-friendly regulations and incentives to strengthen investor confidence. In return, companies that do invest are winning increasingly larger shares of business in those enormous and profitable sectors that I talked about. So a lot of early progress, ladies and gentlemen, has been made in multiple fronts. There will undoubtedly be challenges, and indeed, I acknowledge there will be hiccups along the way because the scale and complexity of what we're doing is truly unprecedented on the global stage. But my message to you is that the vision is steadily and clearly moving from the planning to the implementation phase. And the investment opportunities being unleashed are enormously attractive across virtually all sectors and services. Turning briefly to the oil market, I am concerned about recent volatility and prevailing negative sentiment. But the present fundamentals are clearly trending in the right direction. Demand growth, we have to be reminded, remains healthy, with forecasts not only for 2019, but for the extended period beyond that, to be in the 1.3 to 1.5 million barrels range, while supply is starting to reflect already, 2 weeks into the new year, the impact of our decisions in the fourth quarter. In fact, while the 1.2 million cut came into effect only on January 1, secondary sources suggest that OPEC production in December was already more than 600,000 barrels per day lower than November, the bulk of which is due to our preemptive actions. In fact, I can tell you that we in Saudi Arabia went beyond our commitment and have lowered both production and exports over the last couple of months. And as the new 1.2 million barrel cut materializes, we should start to see the impact positively reflected in inventories, which is, of course, the key metric for all of us to watch. Looking at longer-term fundamentals, the healthy demand growth rate of the past several years is projected to continue into the future, as I mentioned. However, global economic growth and prosperity will be predicated on the presence of a healthy and vibrant oil industry, operating in an environment which attracts the necessary investments that will ensure an equal amount of affordable and accessible oil supply is made available in a reliable and timely manner. Saudi Arabia is committed to representing a central part of that reliable supply, as it has always done, and we will continue, as I mentioned, investing in our industry to do so. Shifting to shale oil, I believe that it will not sustainably depress the market. For one thing, despite its healthy growth, it can't by itself meet the combined requirements of demand growth and the natural decline of oil fields around the world, particularly, as I just mentioned, with long-term investment still lagging in most parts of the world, while the emphasis on short-cycle projects still predominates. Furthermore, the growth of shale oil is highly dependent on stability and balance in the market. Healthy shale oil growth and a weak oil market are a contradiction in terms. Instead, market sentiment today is being shaped by undue concerns about demand, underestimation of the impact of agreed supply cuts, and a misreading of the supply-demand trends, which causes counterfactual actions by financial players. In other words, if we look beyond the noise of weekly data and vibrations in the market and the speculators' herd-like behavior, I remain convinced that we're on the right track and that the oil market will quickly return to balance. If we find that more needs to be done, we will do so in unison with our OPEC and non-OPEC partners, where collaboration has been proven to work, and it will be essential going forward. Ladies and gentlemen, I will leave it here, and I look forward to our dialogue and taking on your questions. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the stage Atlantic Council President and CEO, Mr. Frederick Kempe.
Thank you. So, Mr. Minister, we have a tight 15 minutes, so I'm going to jump right into the questions. And thank you so much for that powerful and very strong and important statement. Let me pick up where you ended, which is the markets. And you made a very strong statement about how you were thinking that there's a misreading and that in a way the markets are seeing things wrong. Could you expand on that a little bit? Because the prices have been weak in the wake of the OPEC Plus agreement. And is it really for the reasons you're talking about? Or was it that the agreement was inadequate itself in balancing the market? Or perhaps that some of the participants have been weaker in their commitment than you had anticipated?
Well, when we started in 2017, there were also similar doubts. And it took some time to get the numbers to speak for themselves and for people to see that our conformity level within the OPEC Plus were not only meeting the 100%, but ultimately we had to face the problem of over-conforming and delivering close to 150%, and we had to adjust to that in the second half of last year. So I think skepticism of the market, to me, is unjustified given the fact that we have delivered once, the same group of countries when needed. The other, somewhat surprising fact is that if you look at the fundamentals, although there have been, the last 3-4 months, we have seen the trend of rising inventory, the absolute number that we have to bring down is significantly less than what we faced at the end of 2016. We're talking, if my memory serves me correctly, in the neighborhood of 40 million barrels of inventories above the 5-year average that we need to reverse. And given the 1.2 million barrel cut, given the potential disruptions elsewhere, impact of sanctions that we remain to see on a sustained basis, I just can't see it taking a long time. While 2 years ago, when we were coming into the first OPEC Plus agreement, we had really a very high mountain to climb, and we still managed to do it in a relatively reasonable period of time. So I believe, like I said in my prepared remarks, it will not be long before the key metric of inventories correct this sentiment, bearish sentiment that has prevailed. I think it has turned already. the last 2 weeks on the back of the cuts that we pre-delivered in December and January. I mentioned already that for us, at least Saudi Arabia, February will even be a steeper, you know, and we will remain. January and February, we're below our commitment to the OPEC plus group. We did it in the beginning of 2017, and we're doing it again. And I'm confident that my colleagues, I believe His Excellency Minister Al-Mazroui also delivered a strong statement here about the Emirates more or less doing the same thing. These are voluntary, and I'm hoping the others will follow suit, and time will show that.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your salute to Minister Mazroui, who played such an important role in his chairmanship of OPEC. You talked about U.S. shale oil, and I have two questions there. One of them is, with shale oil reaching a new record of 8 million barrels a day by the end of 2018, U.S. crude oil closed the year at 11.7, becoming net oil exporter, first time since 1991. There are some skeptics that say OPEC Plus is cutting just to make room for more U.S. shale oil. So that's part of the question. What do you think of that statement? But second of all, are we learning more about the dynamic about what you do and how that affects shale oil? Sort of where is the market sensitivity there, and how does that interact?
Well, first of all, the U.S. is not the only country that turns from being net importer to exporter, or vice versa. Many of the former OPEC members have gone the other way around. So I don't think, I've said it before, I don't think it's appropriate to focus on one country and one geography. We have to look at the totality of world oil markets. I am of a generation where I remember when the size of the market was in the 60 to 70 million barrel range, and many people said the market will never exceed 90. We're at 100 and still growing at 1.3 to 1.5. So obviously you need new sources of supply as countries, significant exporters like Indonesia at one point of time, Malaysia, Mexico, turned down Venezuela from losing 2 million barrels. I think the U.S. production is more than welcome. The dynamics of U.S. production being dispersed and distributed among hundreds of companies and really without central guidance and management is challenging, not only in terms of making sure it's profitable to the producers, but it's difficult to predict because you have to talk to so many of them, and that is indeed a challenge to predict. But it's a reality we have to accept and in a way welcome it, because it will keep the world from facing the shortages. We've seen the impact of oil prices rising from $40, $50 in 2016, 17 to 80 to 90 a few months ago, and how that created a lot of stress on some developing economies and indeed even consumers in the US. So we know high oil prices are not healthy, and US shale and its flexibility and ability to respond quickly to market conditions and prices is a way to moderate the volatility. And I remind you, Fred, that this is exactly our objective. We want to moderate volatility. So I think we have to think of ourselves working in a way in conjunction with the shale oil phenomena to keep the markets within a reasonable bound. But I said in my remarks, a downturn today would be very hurtful and would kill a lot of investment in the U.S. shale business, which is the last thing we want to see. And therefore, the action we have taken quickly in December of this year, and that we're seeing implementation as we speak, is a lifeline to U.S. shale producers. Yeah. And I can tell you that many of them call me when they see that price trend going down, and when they see investors starting to turn away, and they say it's time to do something. Of course, they want us to do all the work. They want to take the benefit, but that's, that's life. And like I say, we're looking not only at our own well-being and our own interests, but truly we're looking at global interest as well, and a balanced, stable, less volatile oil market is in the interest of all.
So to put my former hat on as Wall Street Journal journalist of many years ago, would you be willing in this audience to define reasonable bound? As you say, keeping the prices in a reasonable bound?
I've been consistent, and I've been able to avoid being trapped into setting a price target or a price range. But I exercise a lot, and I used to be a runner, and my body, I feel it when it's time to stop. The knees start hurting. That you've gone a bit too far, and when you feel lethargic, it's time to jump out of bed and put on your sneakers and go running. And I think we get the vibes, we get the signal from the market, and I can tell you that below 60 now, and in 2015-16, we were getting the signals from everywhere. Get your act together and do something.
Yep.
We heard it from consumers, because if you recall, in 2015-16, people were complaining about lack of demand, industrial demand from producing countries. We were afraid at that time of negative interest rates, of deflation, and the commodity markets was seen as one trigger, and of course oil is the key within the commodity markets. And I can tell you that when we hit 86 and people were predicting 100 plus, the signals we were getting also from global markets was that we needed to cool the market, and which we did on both sides. I think what we need to do is narrow the range. I mean, this range of volatility I'm not happy with it. We need to do better, and the more producers that work with us, the better off we're able, and the more responsive the producers in terms of the speed of their reaction, the more successful will be this effort to reduce volatility.
Thank you very much, and also for that wonderful image of an unbalanced market as a knee injury. But having had my knee replaced, I don't balance markets so well. Let me then go to something else you said, and with the big news that hit this week, and that was the audit of your oil reserves. It came in at 268.5 billion barrels, more than previously understood, so congratulations. More specifically, what can that mean for your oil strategy going forward? What more specifically do you think that says about the value of Saudi Aramco and your first international bond issuance this year?
Well, this is 3 questions in one. So, I think more important than the fact that we had 2.2 billion barrels of oil reserves added, and almost 10% of our gas reserves also were increased. I think it was a testimony to the process that underlies the booking of these reserves. This is a process that essentially has happened over 80 years. So Saudi Aramco has built this mechanism under the ministry's close guidance and supervision, with appropriate checks and balances, and we have shown over many decades, since the 80s, that Saudi Aramco, plus or minus 2 billion barrels a year, has been able to replace its production. So I just want you to think that there is no reason within the next 2 decades, for example, to think that we can't continue to do that. If we've done it successfully for so many decades, I think you can also project, not only certify that we have 288 billion within the kingdom, 268 billion within the kingdom, but that the process of producing 4 billion barrels a year, and through exploration, development, assessment of the size of the reserves, be able to continuously add to it and almost replace it completely, is likely to continue. And if it doesn't continue, we'll be the first one to show it. So there is no reason for us to care whether our reserves are 268 or 248. We will be, very willing to let the numbers be what they are. So that's one thing. I think the other thing they tell you, in addition to what we just talked about, shale, and the fact that other regions and other basins, and for all we know, the land we're on here in the Emirates also has plenty of oil supply. So all of the previous concerns that we have to rush into replacement of oil and gas with other sources because we're reaching a period where it will deplete are unfounded. God has given us a planet that has a lot of resources, a lot of oil and a lot of gas, and we should use it judiciously, and we should use it efficiently and in an environmentally acceptable way. And for us in the kingdom, I think it allows us to pace ourselves and say, we're going to be in the business of using this resource longer than we have, which is since the 1930s. So how do we do this? We're going to do it by shifting a lot from oil as a fuel to oil as a material feedstock. You will be seeing over the next few years, and indeed in the next few decades, turning not only our gas but our liquid fuels into the key material for manufacturing within the kingdom and around the world. You will see millions of barrels of oil going into chemicals. That has technical and commercial challenges today, especially with the advent of U.S. shale, to be able to compete with low-cost ethane. But we believe if there is a will, there is a way, and we'll be investing in technology. Indeed, we have invested in a lot of technology that turn crude oil to chemicals, bypassing a lot of the refining processes. So that's going to do that. That takes me into the last part of your question, which is the SABIC Aramco transaction. This is not just about financial benefits, because it will have many financial benefits. The companies are geographically close by, so there are a lot of synergies and integration opportunities of reducing overheads and unifying marketing channels and allowing a lot to go on between the two companies. But it has also a very strong industrial logic, because it will allow the combination of Aramco, which is one of the largest spenders and producers of intellectual capital today, with their research, with SABIC, who is also one of the largest in the chemical space, to work together to achieve what I just mentioned, turning more of our hydrocarbons into the most advanced materials for manufacturing, from aerospace to cars to constructions. I see, inshallah, within my lifetime, that a lot of structural steel will be replaced with composites and materials made out of hydrocarbons. Cars, which need to be lighter and more durable, will also be the same. And of course, aerospace is already moving in that direction. But as you think of 9 billion people who need to consume more, and more of them are in the middle class, I think the need to do that is beneficial, both from an economic as well as from human prosperity standpoint. And of course, it is environmentally sound to turn the oil and gas we have into materials rather than burn it into fuel and emit it into the atmosphere.
Thank you. So in the last 2 minutes we have here, and we've really run out of time, I'm afraid, although I'm sure everyone in the audience could listen to you all day on these issues, and that was a really interesting vision of the future uses of oil. Put on your vision hat for these last 2 minutes. As you're looking forward, and you've lived through so much of energy change in the energy world, what are you looking at that excites you most in the developments in the energy world? Say 10, 20 years out, what excites you the most? And then what worries you? Biggest concern, biggest opportunity?
I think what excites me the most is renewables, and it excites the entire leadership of the kingdom, spearheaded by His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. I mean, it's no secret that he sees renewables as the future of energy, especially in electricity generation. And he has set a very ambitious target. We'll be talking about it within Sustainability Week. I talked about it last week in the kingdom when we announced our new energy mix. Solar really is unbound in terms of its potential. Coupling it with breakthroughs in storage is the holy grail, so to speak, and we're going to be pursuing this. And hopefully I will live long enough to see the ability of countries like Saudi Arabia with abundant solar energy to go 100% solar in our electricity generation. Until then, we're going to be relying on a lot of gas, which is the least emitting. And then beyond that, we will use oil and gas for longer period for the uses I just illustrated. So I think that's the most exciting thing. Another thing that I see as potentially game-changing is doing more at scale of turning carbon into an input into manufacturing, and we're doing a lot of this in the kingdom, using CO2 to manufacture materials like fertilizers, like methanol, and so on and so forth. Putting it in cement, so there's a lot of research. So a material that is being seen today as harmful to the climate, turning it into a building block for society is something that has a lot of potential. Turning CO2 into an enabler for producing oil. We're injecting CO2 into reservoirs today to produce oil, and I think we'll be doing more of this and want to do it collaboratively. And we want it to be part of the solution to climate change.
And concern, what keeps you up at night?
I've said before that I really don't have a problem sleeping at night. My biggest problem is waking up in the morning. I do like my sleep. If I sound slow this morning, it is because I overslept, I'll admit. But I think as a global citizen, not necessarily as an energy professional and leader. What bothers me most is the tension that happens on the geopolitical stage. I mean, there are conflicts that are absolutely unnecessary and unneeded. You look in the Middle East, you look at what's happening in Syria, you look at what's happening in Yemen, you look at what happened in Iraq, you look at what's happening in Libya. These are great countries with wonderful people that are suffering because of ill-intentioned elements that are sowing the seeds of chaos in our society. And I hope the good part of society and the great leaders that we have here in the region and around the world will prevail and bring in peace and prosperity, because there is so much good that we could do in innovation and technology and investment and working together around the world. And certainly there is a lot of positive energy. We have talked about it in Vision 2030. We've seen it here in the Emirates for many, many years of focusing on what good we can do rather than what bad can we do to our neighbors. And I hope that the Atlantic Council and conducting this forum and talking about how energy can be an enabler for peace and prosperity and progress of humankind is the way forward, and that will allow me to sleep even more.
What a wonderful ending spot to end on this. Thank you for getting up this morning to be with us. And I'd ask everyone to stay in your seats. We're going to take a quick photo here, and then we're moving straight into our next session, which is an innovation presentation on zero emissions fossil fuels by Bill Brown. So thank you so much, Mr. Minister. That was excellent.
Thank you, Fred.
First, I'll come in a second. There we go. Thank you.